And what I want to talk about, I want to talk a little bit about energy with this show and the state of the world and what we can do about it. And I want to particularly talk about the goddess energy. And I know all these Christians out there saying, what do you mean goddess? What's this pagan stuff? Well, when I say goddess energy, I'm just talking about the female side of this human energy. You know, when I think of the goddess energy, I think of every woman as a goddess. This is just the way I think. This is the way a lot of the New Age people think. But I mean, it's all good. I'm not saying anything against God by using the word goddess, and I'm not thinking anything pagan, okay? I'm just using the term. So this goddess energy, the power of the female of our species, this is what needs to be harnessed. This is something that has, well, it's one of the most downtrodden aspects of our society. What's been done to the females in our society? They've been turned into, well, I won't use derogatory terms, but objects of lust, or housewives, or meek, frail, the weaker sex type image. You know, powerless, talking about their nails or hair all day. This is the way they're portrayed on television, and this is what the mindset that a lot of young girls and things get, and a lot of women in our society are pretty well victims of our society. And if you look in history, and you look at the history of the world, and even if you go back and look at some pagan traditions, even if you look there, I mean, like I said, folks, you've got to look at everything. So I mean, I look at all of this stuff. You've got to, in order to be able to gain some sort of perspective. It's never just one perspective. You've got to look at everything in order to figure out what's going on. So even when you look at some of these pagan things, you find that the main power there was the goddess power. When you look at ancient Egyptology, you look at it was Isis. She was the main power. You look at all the Egyptian pharaohs. The pharaohs were basically chosen by their wives. The wives, the queens of Egypt, were the powerful ones. They just chose the pharaoh as their husband. But it was a woman who held all the power. You've got the Virgin Mary, the Holy Mother. You've got Mother Earth. It's always the female energy. You see what I'm saying? All of these traditions are all feminine traditions. And it is this feminine energy that has been so squashed in our modern society. And even within religions, the women are always the subservient ones, when the women are really the powerful ones. You know, if you look at nature, well, I mean, if you're in the wild, if you had to choose a fight between a male lion and a female lion protecting her young, I'm sure you would choose the male. Not that you would want to have a fight with the lion at all. But it's the same in any situation. You know, you'd go the male rather than the female protecting her young, because the female protecting her young will usually get the upper hand of most things. That's throughout nature. The female is far more powerful than the male, and we need to be able to harness some of that female energy. Attempting to connect with some of that female energy was the entire reason that I actually put out the film The Calling, which was a remake of a bunch of earlier stuff that I did. But this was done at the advice of a young friend of mine who thought that if we added a more spiritualistic slant to it and maybe took out some of the pictures of blown up children, then we might be able to appeal to some of the female energy and get some female energy involved in this fight against the New World Order. And I believe that it is imperative that we do just that. And that's basically what I want to dedicate a lot of this show to tonight, ladies and gentlemen, to try to address the issue of what this truth movement, which is sort of being hijacked by the conspiracy culture, which is also being hijacked by the New Age culture, which is this whole conglomerate that we're involved in. I really want to try to put it in some sort of perspective and to try to make people just pause in what they're doing for a little bit, whether you're involved in religious gatherings, whether you're involved in New Age gatherings, whether you're involved in protesting, whether you're involved in New World Order research, or what you're doing. If we could just get you to all pause for a moment and just combine your energies and try to look at the bigger picture of what's going on here and how we can address it. I can be in the emotional state where the New World Order is already lost. It's already lost. We've already won. This is just how it happened. I have absolutely no fear of what's going on in the world. And so I can look at this information, I can acknowledge the negative stuff in the world, but it doesn't worry me because it's just information, because I know in my heart and in my whole being that this battle is already won. But the time it takes for it to manifest in this reality, the time it takes for this beautiful world to manifest, depends on the amount of people who can send themselves in that love and be able to face this dark energy as just information in order to address this dark energy that's in our world. And we've got a lot of women who are incredibly powerful. These are incredibly powerful spiritual beings. We have a whole generation of these spiritual beings. It isn't the information that's bad, it's the emotion that she's attaching to that information. If she could put her energy into addressing this dark information, I tell you folks, if we had a women's group stand up and say, hey, we know what you're doing with your New World Order, we know what you're doing with your vaccinations, we know about all of this stuff that all these people talk about, we know about this stuff and we want the problem fixed, we want it addressed right now. If we got a women's group to stand up and say this, folks, we'd change the world overnight. You know what these women's groups can do? There wasn't even an investigation into 9/11 until a women's group got involved. That whole 9/11 Commission report, a whitewashed piece of garbage that it was, it still would never have been produced if it wasn't for the women going and hassling the government and saying, hey, look, we want an investigation, we're not happy with what you're doing. Now, men can scream out this stuff all the time, but men don't listen to us. All the government's run by men, so they don't listen to men screaming out. But you get a bunch of women in there, they get that goddess energy happening, whoa, they can move mountains. They can really move mountains. If we could get some of these people, some of these incredibly powerful spiritual people, to simply step away from the fear, to truly understand how things work, and to address the darkness that we ourselves have allowed to become manifest in this world, we could fix the problem. We could fix them very, very easily. I think that's something that really, really seriously needs to be looked at. And something else that I said on the show last week was that evolution of consciousness, the evolution of consciousness that we are all involved in, is a two-step process. And the first step lies within this physical reality. And that humanity needs to acknowledge the negatively polarized energies that have become resident within this physicality in order to change them so that the consciousness that we are all part of is free to evolve. And more often, the choice that's made to ignore these polarized energies that are manifest in this reality is because it's a choice made from fear. If people will just step away from the fear, it's just information. You have to acknowledge the flaws that manifest in this reality and face them and make a stand to fix them. We really, really do have to do this, folks. That's why I believe it's so important to try to reach this goddess energy and get the women involved in what's going on. I know there is a lot of women involved, but we need a real movement. We need a groundswell of consciousness amongst the women of these issues. We need these beautiful, wonderful, powerful creatures to stand up. We really do. And like I said, folks, you can look at this dark information. It doesn't worry me because I'm in a state of unconditional love. I don't attach negative emotion to information. Most people think they're attaching emotion to negative information. They're not. What they're doing is they're attaching negative emotion to information because it's just information. You see, that's the thing. It's putting away the fear, folks. A lot of these women, like, she knows that the world is heading for a beautiful place. She knows that the consciousness is rising. So, what's the fear? What's the fear about addressing the darker side of what's happening in this physicality? Because the sooner that darker side is addressed, then the sooner the consciousness will evolve as it should. But too many people think, well, I don't have to address it because in 2012 the world's going to change. Well, the evolution of consciousness that everybody's waiting for comes down to free will. It comes down to the freedom of choice of the people. And unless we face the shadow self, then, well, we're going to be in for a rude awakening. I see 2012 as the tipping point. We can go either way. We can truly go either way. And I know which way I would like the consciousness to go. See, if you know that the world is wonderful, that the battle is already won, that this consciousness is evolving to a higher plane the way it is supposed to do, then what's the fear? What is the fear about bad information? The information that's coming into you is not bad, it's not negative. What is bad and what's negative is the way you are receiving the information. It's information, so it should be empowering. All information is empowering, especially information about the darkness, because that gives you the opportunity to fix the problem. And rather than something to fear, it would be something that you would be concerned about. I mean, fear often brings inaction through emotional paralysis, whereas concern about a problem tends to make someone wish to take positive steps to address that concern and to remedy that concern. There's nothing to fear, folks. There's nothing to fear. There are several things we need to be concerned about, and we need to fix them. But there's truly nothing to fear.